وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our study of معالم الطريق بطلب العلم of Sheikh Sadhan حفظه ta'ala. Last week we were discussing the issue where the Sheikh was advising and discussing how to take notes and benefit from the books that we read in our notebooks. And now we move to the next topic, Al-Amr al-Sadis, the sixth issue in relation to etiquette, Al-Insatu wa Adam al-Ishtighal. Having silence when it comes to the lesson, means being silent and listening, wa Adam al-Ishtighal, and not being distracted or busied. And he says that it's seen in circles of knowledge that some of the students of knowledge occupy themselves and others. And this contradicts the practice transmitted to us from our predecessors. Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah mentions in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah mentions in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala and Tadhkirat al-Hufadh on the authority of Ahmad bin Sinan that he said Abdul bin Mahdi rahimahullah would not speak in his gatherings, no one would speak in Abdul ibn Mahdi's lessons, nor would we be sharpening our pen, nor would anyone stand up, and if it was as if there were birds on their heads, or as if they were in salah. And he brings a similar narration as well about the gatherings of Abdul ibn Mahdi, rahimahullah, the great muhaddith. And these narrations, brothers and sisters, are mentioned in the Kitab Jami' al-Akhlaq al-Rawi wa Adab al-Sami' of Khatib al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah, under the chapter Tawqiru Majlis al-Hadith, the chapter in relation to respecting and venerating the sittings of hadith. And in there he brings a number of narrations. The one he mentioned here is authentic. Isnad is sahih from Abdurrahman Ahmad bin Sinan that he said this. And hadith number, or athar number 324. And there's also something similar, and number 325. And Shaykh explains, saying that because the gathering is one of tranquility and mercy, and because the malaika they attend, and the distraction distracts the student of knowledge and the teacher, and this will contradict the awe of gatherings of knowledge, and the hayba of halaqatul ilm. So this is the etiquette when we come to the classes, that we try our best not to distract one another and distract ourselves from the maqsood, which is the ilm. And the benefit we take is the narration and setup that they were very strict in this. And if you go back to the Kitab of Qadir al-Baghdadi, he mentions a lot in there. It's one of the best books in adab from the classical scholars, Al-Jami' al-Akhlaq al-Rawi wa Adab al-Sami'. He mentions there many benefits. And one of them was that this is how the Sahaba used to learn as well. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's mentioned in Bukhari and also others. And Qadir al-Baghdadi narrates it himself. Bukhari and Muslim, they both narrate. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, whenever he would come out to the Sahaba, how were the Sahaba? Abu Sa'id al-Khudri says, كنا جلوسا في المسجد. We were sitting once in a masjid. إذ خرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فجلس إلينا. We were sitting one time in the masjid, and Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم came out to us in the gathering and sat with us. فكأن على رؤوسنا الطير لا يتكلم أحد منا. It was as if birds landed on our heads and nobody spoke. And these kinds of narrations, what does it mean that as if birds on our heads? Because not the first time, right? This is the Sahaba, how they used to sit with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And you go to the hadith of Bara ibn Azib, the long hadith about when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and Sahaba were sitting around the funeral or the grave during the funeral procession, and they're waiting for him, alayhi sallam, or the grave to be dug. He told them a long hadith. They were reading same description, as if birds were on their head. So Khatib Baghdadi, he brings after this narration, Abu Bakr ibn al-Anbari, rahimahullah, the very famous grammarian, he says, قولهم, the statement that they say, we used to sit with somebody, كأنما على رؤوسهم الطير. What is meant by it is two statements. What is it meant by as if birds were sitting on our head? One of two things, or two possible meanings. Number one, أن يكون معنى أنهم يسكنون, that they were so tranquil and still, فلا يتحركون, no one's moving, and no one's keeping their eyes up, rather than keeping their eyes down. والطير لا يقع إلا على ساكن. For a bird doesn't land except the one who's not moving, someone who's still. So that's one meaning. When you come to a class, you're not moving a lot. And this is benefit because you can distract the teacher and yourself and others. So that's one meaning. And the second he mentioned as well that, along with that, الثاني يقول الثاني إن الأصل في قولهم, that the origin of the statement that as if birds landing on their head, it comes from the They say the story of Sulayman, Prophet Sulayman ibn Dawood, that he would say to the wind, take us forth, and then the birds then would follow with them. And they would follow them, and they will be in the company of them, their eyes lowered out of respect, having honor and i'adam, veneration, etc. So in the angle of respecting the person who you're gathering with. In either case, it's a good etiquette that when we come to the class, that we try our best to remove from distractions our own selves and not try to distract others as well, including the teacher who is teaching. For sometimes distraction can make someone forget the lesson or what they're trying to teach. On top of this, we know, as most of us went to school, we know in class the same thing. If you're trying to benefit and trying to learn, we can't be moving and talking. But imagine someone studying the ilm shar'i, the legislative divine or legislative sacred knowledge. Even more so, that is an act of worship that he has to be in a state of calm. So then when he mentions as if they were in salah, then you can take it as an example. Right? As if you're in salah means in salah also you don't move. So we try to take that benefit when we come to classes, to put the phones away, right? As much as unless we need it for something, to focus on the lesson, because the intent is trying to get the benefit, so you can take it with you. Amr Sabi', he says number 7, حضور ما يستطيع من حلقات العلم, that a student should attend as much of the circles of knowledge as is possible. And he says some people make excuses for their many occupations that they have, or preoccupations, and long distances, and weak willpower. And all of these are true, but this disappears when the servant savors the pleasure of learning and feels the blessing of benefit and learning more. So in reality, everyone has some kind of mashagil, right? Some kind of business, or you live far away, or you have different occupations or tasks, errands, and responsibilities. But the Shaykh's point is that when you have the love of ilm so much, it disappears. And this is true, right? As we mentioned before, if you know what you're studying, it doesn't matter how far you have to go, or how long, how many times you have to come, or how difficult or hard, tired you are, you're still going to make that effort. And to encourage us that, we have to know, brothers and sisters, that that's one of the reasons that someone could weaken their ambitions, when they lose the meaning of the knowledge. What's his intent? When you forgot what you're studying, it becomes like this. For example, some of the ulama, they mention, right, and they're the ones best to know because they're ulama, that knowledge, there's nothing like it. It's the most tasteful, the most delicious, the most pleasurable thing you can imagine. قال الشيخ الإسلام رحمه الله ولا ريب أن لذة العلم أعظم اللذات. And there is no doubt that the pleasure of knowledge is the greatest of pleasures. مجموع فتاوى volume 14 page 162. وقال الشاطبي رحمه الله في الموافقات في العلم بالأشياء لذة لا توازيها لذة. And in knowledge there is a type of pleasure, the knowledge of things, a type of pleasure that cannot be measured or cannot be compared to any other pleasure. And Siddiq Hassan Khan, he says رحمه الله اعلم أن شرف الشيء إما لذاته أو لغيره. Know that the honor of something is either due to itself, what it has in itself intrinsically, or due to its benefit that comes by way of it. والعلم حائز الشرفين جميعا. Knowledge combines between both. لأنه لذيذ في نفسه. Knowledge is very pleasurable in and of itself. فيطلب لذاته. So it's studied for its own benefit. لذيذ لغيره فيطلب لأجله. And because it leads to that which is more desirable, it's also pleasurable for those reasons. Because when you study knowledge and understanding different things, it's so enjoyable, because it's the system of the deen Allah revealed. It's full of wisdoms and principles and things you can pay for. At the same time, the more you learn, the more higher status is amongst the people in front of Allah. So you know that as well. The more you learn, the higher you go right inside of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go up. But imagine now someone is lazy and says, oh, I'm tired. So what do? You just activate that reason. Why are you studying again? For your own benefit, to benefit other people, to get closer to Allah. So when someone remembers that, then really they're not going to miss classes as much as they can, and they try their best to push themselves. To bring us the example now, he's going to bring us a story of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. He says, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he mentioned that he used to have 12 classes a day. And he said to himself, I used to record everything related to them, from the explanation of difficult topics and clarify the difficult expressions and the precise language. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me in my time. And this is mentioned in his biography, 12 classes in a day, and he reviews the 12 classes at night. He does that again and again for how many years? 6 sineen, 6 years. So if you go to Tabaqat al-Shafi'iyya, Ibn Shuhba Shafi'i, he mentions, and he's not the only one, that the biography of Nawawi rahimahullah is very unique. But he mentions what classes was he taking. So he's taking 12 lessons What are some of these classes that he's taking? He's studying Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim. He's studying books in grammar, advanced books in grammar, books in Sarf, Usul al-Fiqh. He's studying Aqidah, Ilm al-Rijal, all these subjects in one day. So not the light classes, but he's taking 12 heavy classes, and he goes home and he just reviews every single one of it. And he continues like this until he becomes Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. So this is a great encouragement to show us that the Imams before, they put great effort, they try not to miss the classes. But if somebody remembers this, then they could also try their best to be at least attending as much as you can. You stick to your schedule as much as you can. Then he brings the statement of Qadir Baghdadi we covered before, that some of the scholars, they traveled to go visit their sheikh, and he passed away before they even reached him. That we also know. That was, he mentioned earlier about that. They tried to get the high isnad, they traveled all the way there, by the time they got there, the sheikh died. Yet that didn't deter them. So he says, if Allah blesses your time and grants you the will and determination, you will attain much goodness, but only on the condition that Allah knows sincerity in your heart, and that you do not belittle or lower the value of the classes and the studies. And knowledge, he says here, or no, do not be lenient or negligent in it. Perhaps there will come a time, if you live long, when you will regret it and you'll bite your fingers in regret. And he gives example of his Shaykh Ibn Jibreel, rahimahullah, that he said that many of the group of students of knowledge, when they were in the time of seeking knowledge, they were regretted later and repented, right, of not going to the class of the sheikhs, right, after when they got older, because they were taking it lightly. And the Shaykh then finishes saying that in reality, if you attend a class, you're in a worship of Allah, and the angels are going to make dua for you. Furthermore, mental concentration is more effective in attending classes than if you listen to a tape. Even though we mentioned before, tapes are a blessing, it's better that you focus in class, you get more benefit. And you know that seeing is more powerful and impactful than hearing. And that's the point. Some brothers, they say, which one should I do? Should I just listen to it live or come? Coming is better, way better. And we just mentioned why, the act of worship. Number two, so in the act of worship, by coming, by leaving your house to come, you come to the masjid, you do ibadah, you're praying there. Thirdly, in the company of malaika and the Riyadh al-Jannah, you're in the middle of Jannah and talab al-ilm, inside the lesson. And then your attention will be stronger, your understanding, memorization will be higher. Just keep going from there. And the one who can't come, we said, he listens, because then he can't come, so he gets what he misses. But somebody who's going to compare the two is not the same. He brings lines of poetry. Ya ibn kiram, la tadnu ألا تدنو فتبصر ما قد حدثوك فما راء كمن سمع. So here essentially the lines are saying that, wouldn't you know that the one who sees is not like one who hears. And we have a hadith, and he brings the hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and said, ليس الخبر كالمعاينة. The khabar, the report, ليس الخبر كالمعاينة. The report about something is not like the one who witnessed it with his eyes. It's hadith sahih, and that's a beautiful hadith to remind us that even sometimes in the class you may see something, an explanation, you can't hear it. So for example, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he tells the Sahaba the hadith, they narrate to the one who wasn't there. But the one who's there, he knows it better. And how do we know this? Because when we go to Usul Hadith then we have principles. Al-Rawi adra bi rawayati. Al-Rawi, the narrator hadith, adra, he's more knowledgeable min rawayati. He's more knowledgeable the Rawi min ghayrihi, other than him. Why? Because he narrated it. He was there, he heard it, and he saw it. And sometimes the ulama use that to show you what? The one who narrated and saw it, he's got preference. He knows not only the wordings, he knows the maqsood. For example, the length of the beard. The whole mas'ala of qabl, cutting it when you put a fist length or not. Whose narration is that? Ibn Umar. And who's understanding the ulama debated on? Ibn Umar. Because he saw the hadith, he narrated it, and he understood it, that's what the intent was. In his opinion, that it's just qabl. After that you can cut. That was his understanding of it. But why did some scholars give him weight? Because he narrated and he witnessed it. He said he knows better what's intended. Compared to someone maybe who heard it after. Although the correct opinion is that's contested, because other Sahaba also narrated. But the point of benefit, the narrator who sees is not like one who heard. Even Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one day he prayed salah on the mimbar, so everyone could see his salah. So imagine the one who saw it and the one who heard it. It's not the same. It's not the same, right? So if you come to class, you can get benefits you can't come if you heard. Not to mention you can ask questions, right? That's another one, right? So sometimes people online, you type in the chat, no one's answering, right? So come to the class, you get the answers. Al-Amr Thamin, number 8. Al-Hadr min Ya'is. Be wary of Ya'is, being despairing. And he says some of us may spend a long time with the Shaykh, and he says to himself, that, the Shaykh has explained the issue or of usury riba, or the books of, he's explaining the book of hudud, corporal and capital punishment, or the kitab on nikah or talaq, and I only understood, very little or not much, right? Illa yasir, and I only got a little bit out of it. And he said, this is reality, this is true. This is true, right? Now he says that, however, despite all this, simple knowledge the more one repeats it, the more one recalls it, and the more one continues to strive for it, the more they're going to understand it. Means, just because you missed a little bit of it, or you only got a little bit in the first time, doesn't mean you're going to give up. You have to keep going. And that's the nature of ilm, that some subjects you study, you didn't understand anything. You have to do it again, and again, and again. And some ulum, that's how they are learned. Like Nahu Musarraf, for example, morphology and Arabic grammar, or Usul al-Fiqh, and Usul al-Tafsir, or Hadith, they require multiple readings. You have to do it one time and a second time, maybe sometimes the same book because you didn't get it. So now the Shaykh's mentioning this because some people, when they do it one time, they say, that's it. I have to quit, I can't understand anything. And everything's hard the first time, right? If you don't know it. So he says now, for example, it's reported that Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, it's said about him, despite his great station and virtue, that he said, I spent 9 years studying the book of menstruation until I understood it. In the reality, this narration is weak, right? But the point is still there. That some of the Salaf, they spend a lot of time learning one subject. They spend money and time. Literally, some spent thousands of dinar to study one subject, one chapter, and they didn't get it. And he gives us a story now. He says, look, Imam al-Shinqiti, rahimahullah, Muhammad Amin al-Shinqiti, he narrates about himself in the introduction of his tafsir. And he says that when he was studying, when he was younger, his shaykh explained to him a certain issue, a mas'ala, but he didn't become clear to me, he said. And the issue didn't become clear to me, so I returned to home and I researched and continued researching it. While the servant, the maid in the house, stood over my head with a lamp or candle. Remember, he's from Shinqit, right, Mauritania. With a lamp, guys, candle. And I continued to research and sipped green tea until 3/4 of the day passed. Until the Fajr broke. Fajr time came in. And by that time, finally, I was able to solve the conclusion, or I got to clear the confusion. And I refrained attending the next day's class in exchange for all of this. Means after all effort, he missed the next class to take a break. But that's what he was doing to become the great Imam. Today, some of us, mess that as hard, we just give up. Why would it be the case? If something's hard, you just keep repeating it. You ask it different ways, you check different explanations, you ask different people, different shuyukh, you try to figure it out, but you don't give up. And many of us would also admit that if we did this, we would find that any time you come across mas'ala, you don't give up, you just say, okay, now this part, I'm going to just stay on it until I get it. Then you're going to become someone more knowledgeable. But some brothers would do is they just lower the self-esteem, say, khalas, I have to retire, there's no point for me to study ilm. And especially like you mentioned, some of the chapters, kitab al-nikah, talaq, or hudud, or other subjects, we have a lot of details and are foreign to people usually compared to other topics. So we have to take advantage, brothers, that we don't give up. As a faidah, as you can tell, Imam Shinqiti, he loved green tea. That's a faidah. He loved green tea. His student, Atiyah Salim, he said if we brought Shaykh Shinqiti green tea, he answers all the questions. Right? That's how he was, right? So this is from his biography. If you read, when he says green tea, there's more than one reference to the green tea. Unlike Sa'di, who liked coffee. He says here also, Faidah, Hamad bin Sari, rahimahullah, said, Kuntu fi shababi, I used to be when I was young, when I was a young man, he said, Aqra'u wa aktubu fil fajr. I used to read and write until Fajr time. Wala anam, I will never sleep at night. Ila shay'an qalil min dhuhr, except a few hours after dhuhr, or a few moments after dhuhr. And this is narrated from his own self. Hamad bin Sari, most of us know, is one of the big imams of our time. And this is what he says, how we used to study when we were younger. And these are encouragements to show us that these imams, what are they doing all night? Right? Some might wonder, what are they doing? This is what they're doing. They get stuck somewhere, they keep going over and over. And if you want more on those examples, just read the biographies of any of the great imams. Imam al-Albani, probably, rahimahullah, is one of the most inspiring as well of our times. And the Salaf, and there's plenty. So now the Shaykh says, so our brothers who study, some of the brothers who study the fundamentals of religion told me that some hadith scholars might research it for 6 or 7 days in biographies and famous figures just to come up with the narrator. And this is, like I said, Imam al-Albani, if you read his biography, it's very clear. He used to read the manuscripts and sometimes looking for the narratives when there was no computer, right? So he was doing it by hand, manually. And so he's a great example. And he says, do not belittle the good effort Allah has given you. With effort Allah has given you, seek help from Allah, then the strength of the mind and Allah and the strength of the mind afterwards, and Allah has given you, and be ready to and show readiness in your limbs and to seek and acquire and exert your effort. And he brings the statement, قال مجاهد رحمه الله لا يتعلم العلم مستحيي ولا مستكبر. The Mujahid رحمه الله said, as is reported in Bukhari in mu'allaq form, that the one who, or two people, they don't learn, the one who is shy and the one who is arrogant. The one who is shy because he doesn't ask what he needs to be asking about, and the arrogant one because he doesn't want to humble himself and say he doesn't know. So here, brothers, we can see that we just try our best and make effort, because knowledge is not gained without the comfort of the body. And Amr Tasi, he says, number 9, عدم المقاطعة, not cutting off or interrupting the teacher in the class. He says this relates to the etiquettes of the halaqat. Sometimes you may encounter someone in halaqah interrupting the shaykh, and some of them may even respond to the shaykh in a reprehensible manner. And there is no doubt that this is bad manners, and the Prophet ﷺ taught and disciplined us, saying, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ he's not one of us, مَنْ لَمْ يُجُلْ كَبِيرَنَا, the one who doesn't respect our elders, وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرَنَا, has mercy on our youngsters, وَيَعْرِفْ لِعَالِمِنَا حَقَّهُ, and doesn't know our scholars' rights. And this riwayah with Ahmed is reported by Ahmed and Hakim, and Shaykh says Imam al-Albani authenticated in Sahih al-Jami'. Although the more famous wording without the last part, وَيَعْرِفْ لِعَالِمِنَا حَقَّهُ. Then he says that among the things scholars have stated is that you should not interrupt the Shaykh during a conversation or discussion until he has finished his question or his speech, and what he's discussing. Imam al-Bukhari, he reports, rahimahullah, Bab, chapter, Man su'ila ilman, whoever has been asked about certain knowledge, and he is busy, the teacher is busy, and he then, so whoever has asked a question, مسألة مشتغل في حديثه فأتم الحديث, right? Whoever is asked a question and he is busy في حديثه while in speaking, then he completes his speech right before answering that. ثم ساق الحديث, then he brings the hadith that A'rabi, a Bedouin, came to the Prophet ﷺ when he was giving a lecture, and he said, متى الساعة, when is the hour? فمضى رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم في حديثه وأعرض عنه. And Nabi ﷺ continued his speech and he turned away from him until he finished his speech. Then he said, where is أين أراه سائل عن ساعة? Where is the questioner who asked about the hour? So he says this indicates that the Prophet ﷺ heard him, but he turned away from him تأديبا وزجرا له, in order to discipline or to rebuke him for that. So here's where we get the idea and the dalil for questions at the end. It comes from this, that if the lecture finishes, then you ask the questions, not in the middle. Unless the class is a type of class where the Shaykh says you can ask. It's different. In some classes there's a munaqasha, it's a debate or a discussion. Or mudhakara. So the Shaykh will say something, the students say something. Some classes are like that. That's different. One where it's a halaqah or a khutbah. A khutbah you can't say anything, but like let's say it's a halaqah, a muhadara, you just listen, and at the end, and sometimes there is no question and answers. So this is a benefit that when we come to the class, you don't cut off the teacher. And the reason being, obviously, is that you're going to distract the teacher from what is he or she, he is supposed to teach you, and you're going to miss. At the same time, we can see that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaching all these etiquettes. And again, like I said, if you go to the books, you find these etiquettes there. And if you want a good collection of them, Sahih al-Bukhari, Kitab al-Ilm. Most of these adab are there. And we want to mention a benefit before the salah about attending. We said attending the classes is very important, and the difference between a student who attends and one who doesn't, and the one who makes effort and one who doesn't, is between the one who excels and the one who doesn't. So if you want to know why, we have to try to attend more and to work harder more. The person who attends more, who works harder after the class is done, who memorizes, takes the notes, he's going to excel, and the one who doesn't will go back, even though the one who's falling back may be more knowledgeable or more capable. So the reason we're saying that is because sometimes we confuse the effort with the capacity. Maybe you're not as good at memorization as someone else, but you memorize and you review more than the other one. So you're going to be more knowledgeable. Or you attend and the other one's busy. And now a proof. Bukhari, Kitab al-Ilm, he has the hadith of Abu Hurairah. And we all know Abu Hurairah, radiallahu ta'ala, Amir Mu'mineen for hadith, right? He's considered the first great hadith scholar or expert. Even though he's not the only one there in the hadith, but he's number one. So the Sahaba, they asked, and people used to complain about Abu Hurairah, how come he knows all these hadiths? He said, إن الناس يقولون, people are saying, أكثر أبو هريرة. Abu Huraira has increased in narrating. ولولا آيتان في كتاب الله ما حدثت حديثا. He said, it wasn't for two verses of Allah, I wouldn't narrate to you. Two verses of Allah in the Quran, I wouldn't have narrated you hadith. Then he read the ayah, إن الذين يكتمون ما أنزلنا من البينات بالهدى إلى قوله الرحيم. So he read the ayat in the Quran, those who conceal that which Allah has revealed from the clear-cut signs and guidance. And then he explains how Abu Huraira got ahead. It's very important because when you look at the seerah of the Sahaba, you can learn things. Number one, he says, إن إخواننا من مهاجرين, our fellow brothers from the immigrants, muhajirin, كان يشغلهم الصفق بأسواق. That they were busy with trading and the clamor of the suq, يعني they're businessmen. وإن إخواننا من الأنصار, and our brothers from Ansar, كان يشغلهم العمل في أموالهم. They were busy with their activities and their wealth, mostly farming and agriculture. So there's the 2 points. The Muhajir and Ansar, we know who he's talking about there too. Muhajir and Ansar are more senior to him in age. They made the hijrah. Many of them also were more knowledgeable generally, like Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman and Ali. But he's saying here now, وَإِنَّ أَبَا هُرَيْرَةَ, this is the point. As for Abu Hurairah, كان يلزم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بشبع بطنه. Abu Hurairah, talking about himself, he used to hold fast Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم with just enough to keep his stomach full. وَيَحْضُرُ مَا لَا يَحْضُرُونَ وَيَحْفَظُ مَا لَا يَحْفَظُونَ. And that's the point. And he attended what they didn't attend, and he memorized what they didn't memorize. And that's why he became Abu Hurairah. It's not to say now Abu Hurairah because he memorized more hadith, more knowledge of Bakr Umar. No, but see, if someone says why Abu Hurairah memorized so much hadith, he attended, he's always there. See, brothers, the one who comes to class all the time, you can't compete with that one. Why? Because he's always there. He has all the notes, he has all the benefits, he has all the things you're supposed to look for. But the one who misses a lot, maybe he's better in memorization, maybe he's smarter, maybe he's quicker for him, but he misses too much. He doesn't attend, and he can't catch up. And Aini, he mentions in Umdat al-Qari, فيه, in this hadith, فائدة or فوائد, حفظ العلم والمواظبة على طلبه. In the hadith, the benefit. حفظ العلم, to memorize knowledge. That's the first one. Ilm, you should memorize it. Right? And this is another benefit. ويحفظ ما لا يحفظون. Right? So that's why when they talk about fahm and hifd, ulama said there's 2 types of hifd. Hifd al-mahfudat, where you're memorizing of the matan, or hifd mafhumat, memorizing the understanding of the fahm, of the adillah. So you memorize the text and the understanding of it, because you need both of them. But this benefit, Abu Hurairah memorized. Number 2, he kept consistent in the talab, continuous. وفيه فضيلة أبي هريرة وفضل التقلل من الدنيا وإثار طلب العلم على طلب المال. In this hadith we also learn the virtue of Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, and the virtue of lowering, decreasing from the dunya and preferring طلب العلم على طلب المال. And that's the nature of طلب العلم. When someone says I'm طالب علم, you're not going to become rich, brothers. That's not the goal. Some people today are confusing people. I'm rich and طالب علم. What was that about? I don't understand that. If Allah made you rich, great, but that wasn't the goal. What was it? His goal, طلب العلم. But sometimes what happens, both of them can't come. Sometimes, right? Some ulama are rich and some were, and some were well, and some were knowledgeable. The goal is, if you're going to do both, they have to choose preference to ilm. Means if someone were to say, I have to take a little bit less work schedule to come to the class, that's better for them. The dunya and the akhirah. Better for their family. Because more money doesn't make less your life better, right? But more knowledge can make your life blessed. So here, we see Abu Hurairah, he chose to. Not to say that it's what he did was everyone can do. Because Abu Hurairah, we know his situation. He was a muhajir. Yes, also he was Ahl Sufa. He lived inside the masjid. So his situation was different. But still, he preferred enough just to survive. And also the benefit, Al-Aini says also, فيه in the hadith, جواز إكثار الحديث وجواز التجار والعمل وجواز اقتصار الشبع. So all this hadith teaches us the benefits of permissibility of increasing narrating hadith and learning it obviously, and also the permissibility of also business and work, and also permissibility of choosing to just have enough for your survival. Because someone may say, why Abu Hurairah didn't do what the other ulama and sahaba were doing? Abu Hurairah preferred the ilm over, and it helped him. So this hadith is a great encouragement, brothers, to try to attend, try to make effort at home, memorizing, learning, taking the notes, do more. So it's going to help you excel. And this is encouragement that if you miss a class, it's not like without consequences. Of course, you can catch up with the tapes or the audio on this live stream, but if you could have came, you didn't. It's not the same. Last benefit also, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, we also know other parts of his story. His memorization in the beginning wasn't that good either. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made dua for him, as he mentions himself, the hadith, the story about that, that also allowed him to have good memory. So there's more about this, but we'll come to the biography of the Sahaba another time. Anyone have any quick questions, inshallah ta'ala, we'll take for the salah, yes?
It happens to be that a teacher, for example, makes a major manhaj class, happens to be the obligatory instructor should still wait.
So if somebody is learning and he made a mistake in something like erroneous, a manhaj or aqidah, sometimes it could be slip of the tongue. So yes, if someone knows, for example, the Sheikh says something, you can try to write to sometimes they write something to inform him, or at the end of the class, or in the middle, someone near him might say he made a mistake. But the best is try to do bil adab, right? There's different ways of doing it. So it's not in the middle of the class if you know that's going to create a confusion. An example, sometimes the Sheikh makes a mistake in something, or he didn't know something, you come at the end, and you can clarify so you can make a public. It's mentioned, for example, in the biography of Imam Malik and his students, one day Imam Malik was explaining to people the wudu, and he didn't describe to them about cleaning between the toes in the wudu. So of course, his students are there, and when he finished, they told him, Imam Malik, there's a hadith, and there the hadith, it's a hadith sahih, and he said that that's correct, and later on he used to pass that fatwa. So they didn't just come in the middle of when he's giving the Q&A, because you never know, maybe he doesn't take the hadith sahih, but maybe he didn't know. So what do? You take the husn dhan and say, maybe Sheikh, he didn't know, or he sabaq al-lisan, and we go to him after. But then what happens when he finds out? Then he can clarify after. So that's a better etiquette, because you don't want a chaos in the class, right? But the person who, especially if you know better, he made a mistake, sometimes the teacher doesn't know. Allahu a'lam, yes.
Our questioner asks, where can we find the best biography of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu in Arabic?
Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, I'm not sure specifically a book just on it. I know there are some, but it's the best you can find. If you want all of it, Sir Alam al-Nubala. Sir Alam al-Nubala, Imam Zahabi, he has a long biography of it, as well as any of the books about scholars of hadith and Quran. So Tadkir al-Hufaz, or the Tabaqat al-Hufaz, or Qurra, he's in there, all those books of Hurairah's biography. But in Imam Zahabi has a nice, very nice collection. And some are written specific books, but they're more specialized about his narration, how he narrated, and how come he had so many hadith, and we kind of studied that before. Allahu a'lam. Ya Shaykh. So someone are taking advantage of the class they have in front of them. The problem may come that the time the class will be gone, the Shaykh moves away, or he gets sick, or he passes away, or these kinds of things. And what happens with some people, they're always waiting for the time to be right, or when it's convenient. The ni'mah can go away, you lose the whole thing. So as the Shaykh mentioned, his own teachers, they would say that people who studied with them, they were not attending. Then later what happened was that they regretted it, they didn't progress. So when you see a class is opening, or you see the opportunity to come, you come. That's the best way. Don't waste your time and say, tomorrow I'll learn, tomorrow I may never come. And also, what are we waiting for? Right? How much hadith or fawaid you have to hear about the fadl ilm that someone has to be told to come. So take advantage. If you hear about the class, if good teacher, you trust them, come. Especially if you know a person is upon sunnah, you don't want to waste. But some of the brothers, what happens is the laziness. And we mentioned before, where that comes from is the low ambitions for their own selves. And sometimes also, we know, we didn't talk about it, sometimes coming is wajib. You don't even have a choice. Right, so for some brothers, you say you don't have a choice. If it's ilm al-aqidah or salah tahara, you don't know it, it's wajib for you to be there. It's wajib. You're not even allowed to miss. And one more benefit, Shaykh Hassan he mentioned something. He said that one who starts seeking knowledge and stops studying it is like one who turned away in the battlefield. That was it, because he says jihad fi sabilillah, talab ilm. So he said when you start, you can't stop. For some of us now wondering, subhanAllah, that's it. You're in the best field, you can't turn back. And the reason we're saying, we know this ruling on running on the battlefield backwards. He says you can't. And this is important today's time especially. Because if you think about it, you and I, we know we need more Ahl Sunnah. We complain about Ahl Bid'ah, we're Ahl Sunnah. We have to come to the class, we have to be number one. And we have to fill the numbers. Even if you're not learning something, just come to the masjid, just sit in the back. Benefit, fill in with your brothers, support them in the numbers. But what happens today with the technology and their friends, and we're going to get to those also later about some of the most common ones, but we have to be careful. We have to be careful, as we don't want tomorrow to come a time will come and say there's no more class. And how many places did we pass already? How many cities we went to? There's no class. Then you say, oh subhanAllah, we have this class and that class, and those places are looking for one class. But then the problem is when the class comes, we all have to be there for the benefit of our own selves and then of our community. So inshallah ta'ala, that's just an encouragement for all of us. جزاكم الله خير سبحانك بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت